Hi, this is Alex from devstories.eu. AlphaFold, Protein Structure Prediction, Episode 17 of 21. What if your compiler was smart enough to automatically slice your matrix math so it perfectly fits your hardware memory budget? Consider an engineer spending days manually profiling and slicing code to prevent out-of-memory errors. Every time the sequence length changes, the fixed slices fail. Contrast that with a system that dynamically estimates memory footprints and generates partitioned code on the fly. AutoChunk is the algorithm that makes this happen. In the FastFold paper, researchers tackled the massive memory bottlenecks of running long sequences through protein prediction models. The standard approach to avoid running out of memory is chunking. You partition a tensor along dimensions that do not interact during a computation, process those smaller blocks sequentially, and stitch them back together. Usually, this is a manual, labor-intensive process. You profile the code, guess the best slice sizes, and hard-code the boundaries. The FastFold paper points out that fixed chunking schemes are inefficient because they cannot adapt to varying sequence dimensions or specific operational memory spikes. Here is the key insight. The FastFold researchers observed that 95% of the operations in the model use less than 20% of peak memory. Module-level chunking is entirely unnecessary. You only need to chunk the specific operations that cause peak memory spikes. AutoChunk automates this by analyzing your code as a computational graph. It takes that graph and your specific hardware memory budget as inputs. In plain-spoken logic, the algorithm runs a continuous loop. While a memory strategy is still needed, it estimates the memory consumption of the graph to find the single node with the highest usage. A node here is a basic operation, like an addition or a linear projection. Once it flags that peak memory node, AutoChunk determines the maximum possible chunk range extending outward from it. It computes this by checking all active nodes currently holding memory in memory. Next, it identifies every possible chunk strategy within that range by tracing tensor dimensions upwards through the graph. A dimension can only be chunked if it is a free dimension, meaning no computation occurs across it during that specific range of operations. Because tracing every output upwards is computationally expensive, AutoChunk uses a two-stage search. Stage 1 checks if the start and end nodes of a range meet the chunking rules. If they do, Stage 2 performs a deep verification for all the intermediate nodes. After mapping the possibilities, AutoChunk selects the strategy that keeps memory strictly under the budget while minimizing the penalty to execution speed. Finally, the algorithm exits the loop and passes the chosen strategies to a code generator, inserting the optimal partition logic directly into the graph. You no longer hard-code matrix slices and hope they hold up in production. The system analyzes the octave memory state and writes the partition logic for you. The most useful takeaway is that chunking should never be a static, module-wide setting. By isolating and partitioning only the specific outlier operations that cause peak memory spikes, you can process vastly longer sequences without destroying execution speed. That's all for this one. Thanks for listening and keep building.